been a long time, hasn't it? It's been a long time. Hi, thank you very much for clicking. I am a little nervous to be filming because it's been a while, but I'm also very excited. I'm very excited because one, I've been really busy with my semester, so I couldn't find the energy or the time to film myself like this. And that sucked because I have a lot to say. But I'm also very excited because today we are going to be exploring attachment styles. Attachment styles and attachment theory, it's kind of popular in the psychology realm, and if you dabbled in psychology a little bit, you might have heard about it before, you might have read about it. And if you're like me, you kind of dismissed it for its apparent simplicity. You might have said like, oh, this isn't complex enough to be worthy of like delving deep into and like learning about it. But something happened in my life fairly recently that kind of triggered my attachment style, you could say. And I realized how your attachment style it's just very prominent in your life. I'm gonna go into the theory really soon, but before I go into the theory, I kind of want to say, give you the reasons why this video should be pertinent to you, so that you can see, do you really want to watch this or do you want to do something else, right? I mean, I think that's important. So the whole thing about attachment styles and attachment theory is about knowing if you are securely attached or have a secure attachment, or if you're insecurely attached or have an insecure attachment. And that's attachment is how you relate to other people, you could say. I'm going to go more in details, but in general. Here's what it has an effect on when you have an insecure attachment style. It has a direct effect on all your relationships, as I said, and I want to say that we're social animals. So since we're social animals, a huge part of our self-esteem and a huge part of our happiness and contentment has to do with our relationships. And so if that is difficult and lacking, either in presence or in quality, then a huge part of ourself and a huge part of our self-esteem is kind of degraded and we don't feel so good in general, right? So, okay, it has to do, when you're insecure, it has a negative effect on how you deal with and express your emotions and your needs within your intimate relationships. So you might not express it well, not in a healthy way or something like that. It also has an effect on how you deal with conflict, disagreements and arguments, because when you have an insecure attachment style, you generally have a difficult time with boundaries. Boundaries are so essential for good, healthy relationships. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that it has an effect on how you perceive love, your beliefs about love, and what your expectations are when it comes to intimate relationships. And so, what it should feel like or look like and how the other person should treat you, etc. So as you can see, the effect is kind of vast, and it's really important to look. So if in general, in your relationships, you have a lot of fear, either you have a lot of fear when it comes to distancing yourself from the people you love, and so you fear abandonment and you fear being alone, or you fear intimacy and emotional closeness with other people and you push other people away because that fear is a bit too much or something like that. If you go through that, maybe this video is for you and you should actually watch it. Attachment theory is this: when you are born, your first social bond, your first intimate relationship is with your parents or whoever had to care for you throughout your childhood. And so, when we're born, what is the first thing we do? We cry. A baby cries. And the reason why it cries is that the stress, so fear or anger and any other subtype of emotion, triggers your attachment need. And so crying is a way for your mom to see that you are in need, and for your mom or even your father to comfort you and take care of you and meet your need and feed you. All right, so that's attachment. That relationship between you and your caregivers, it has to be attuned. So your parents have to be receptive, able to see your needs, and responsive. They are responding to your needs in an adequate and quick manner. All right. And so if that relationship was attuned and your parents met your needs all throughout your childhood. Quick note, if you think you had an ideal childhood, and that like this isn't for you, then I would urge you to continue watching, because you might think you had a great childhood, but you actually didn't. And so I just want to say that real quick. Okay, so yeah, if that relationship with your parents was attuned and it met your needs, you develop one of the 4 attachment styles, and it is the secure one. So you develop a secure attachment style. You don't fear intimacy, you don't fear independence, you're kind of normal. And that's like 62% of the population who has that attachment style, which is great. But if for whatever reason, and I'm going to go into that later, if for whatever reason that relationship was not attuned and your parents did not meet your needs, well, then you develop one of the 3 insecure attachment styles, right? And so that makes you have a hard time then in relationships throughout your adulthood because of certain beliefs you learned in your childhood. So I want to explain the 4 attachment styles real quick. I just want to say, yeah, your needs, they're not just physical needs. They're also emotional needs and relational needs. And so maybe your parents filled all your physical needs and they fed you and they didn't beat you up, right? Maybe they were present and they were there for you and everything. But there was some form of emotional abuse or neglect, in either like an overt emotional abuse or neglect, so very apparent, very obvious, or maybe a covert emotional abuse or neglect, more subtle, more insidious, so much so that you don't really notice it, So that might have been that. Okay, so yes, there are 4 attachment styles. It's a quadrant, and I'm going to use my arms. Because why? I don't know. Mostly because I don't want to go on the internet to look for a little drawing. I don't want to. I'm lazy. So let's do this. So yes, it is a quadrant, and there are 2 axes in that quadrant. This axis here is anxiety. So you can either be high in anxiety or low in anxiety. If you're high in anxiety, it means that you have a negative view of yourself. You do not trust yourself. If you're low in anxiety, you have a positive view of yourself and you trust yourself. Then the other axis here is avoidance. This is high in avoidance. This is low in avoidance. If you're high in avoidance, it means that you do not trust other people. So you have a negative view of other people. And if you're low in avoidance, it means that you trust other people. You have a positive view of other people. And that's based on your and other people's ability to meet your needs. It's pretty much that. So that's the quadrant. All right, so let's say you're low in anxiety and you're low in avoidance. So you have a positive view of yourself, a positive view of other people. You're in that quadrant here and you're secure. Great for you. As I said, 62% of the population, at least in Quebec, which is my province. That's based on the stats that I've been taught throughout my semester. Just saying. Okay, if let's say you are low in avoidance but high in anxiety, which means that you have a negative view of yourself but a positive view of other people, you're here and you're anxious. And so you seek more closeness with other people and you fear separation and distance and being alone because you don't trust yourself, you trust others. Kinda. It's not really trust. It's a positive view of other people but a negative view of yourself. Just, yes. Then, if you're low in anxiety but high in avoidance, well, then you have a positive view of yourself, but a negative view of other people. And so what you fear actually is closeness and intimacy and emotions, because you don't trust others, you trust yourself. So you prefer and are more comfortable with separation and distance and independence. And anxious attachment style, 9% of people. Avoidant attachment style, which is what I'm describing right now, is 14% of people, or 15. I do not remember, 14 or 15. And if for whatever reason, which is unlucky, it's the hardest attachment style, you have high anxiety, you have high avoidance, which means that you don't have a positive view of yourself or of other people, then you are here in the quadrant and you develop, a disorganized attachment style. It's kind of a mix between anxious and avoidant attachment styles together. Now, it's been 15 minutes. I just want to say, now I will talk about each of the insecure attachment styles. So if you kind of know your attachment style, if you know you're secure, you don't have to watch it. If you know you might be anxious or avoidant, and if you're interested in all of them, you can watch each one of them, but I will put timestamps below. so that, you don't have to waste your time, because sometimes videos are too long. Okay, so you could stop right there and just know that you have an insecure attachment style and go do your research, and great for you. Or we can continue together and explore a little bit further. What I want to explore is the type of parenting that leads to the attachment styles, and then the signs of these attachment styles as an adult, within your relationships, how it might look and feel like, kind of. Okay, so we're going to start with anxious attachment style. Let's see if I forgot anything. No, I didn't. Great. Yes, so anxious attachment style. As I said, when you have an anxious attachment style, you are high in anxiety and you are low in avoidance. And so you have a negative view of yourself and a positive view of other people. That meant that in childhood, you had a positive view of your parents, you could say, but a negative view of yourself. I'm not sure how that relates, to be honest with you, the idea of like positive view of your parents, because it's kind of strange. Anyway, we're going to delve into this. So in general, the anxious person uses activating strategies, right? They want to activate their attachment so that they can bring about more closeness between them and their parents when they're younger, or between them and their loved ones when they're adults. The type of parenting that leads to this type of attachment is inconsistent parenting. So at one point, the parents are there and they are present and responsive and warm and engaged, and the next, for no apparent reason, they are cold and detached and unresponsive and disengaged. And so that creates a lot of insecurity within the child because they do not know how to go about meeting their needs. One day they cry, the parent is there and responds and is comforting. The other day they cry, the parent is not there and is unresponsive. They do not know what type of signal will alert the parent so that the parent responds to their needs. And so that creates a lot of insecurity and confusion and anxiety. And so that might be one thing, inconsistent. Another little layer is emotional hunger within the parents. That's an emotional void that comes from the parents' own trauma or difficult experiences, and they kind of not use, because that's like malicious, but kind of use the child to meet their own emotional needs, to fill that emotional hunger. So when they need a gug, what is that? What is a gug? Good question. When they need a hug, they go and give a hug to the child. When they need to be playful, they go and play with the child. But it always stems from their own needs of closeness. If their needs lead them elsewhere, right, for whatever reason, they don't need the child in that moment. Well, then if the child in that moment needs a hug, needs playfulness, needs comfort, the parent is not there. And so it's more about the parent's needs than it is about the child. And that can come from, a bunch of things. Also emotional immaturity or lack of awareness, you never really know. It doesn't come from malice. It's simply, the reasons I said. Okay. And so that's the type of parenting that leads to anxious attachment. Within the anxious attachment, since it's a quadrant, there's a level of intensity here, right? So you could be kind of like low in avoidance and high in anxiety, but you're here in the quadrant, like closer to the cross. Whereas someone else might have a very intensely anxious attachment and be like here in the quadrant, right? Really high in anxiety and really low in avoidance. And so that will look different depending on the intensity of the anxiety. So signs in adulthood might be that in a relationship, the person wants to text all the time, wants to call every day, wants to see the person a lot. They want to know where the person is if they're not with them, and with who and for how long. Maybe it can be about wanting a lot of closeness with the other person and intimate conversations, but too much so. And they kind of feel as if they are the one loving the other person more, and they are the one pleasing the other person more, because what I said about boundaries and insecure attachment styles with anxious people, anxiously attached people, they have no boundaries. And so they kind of want to constantly meet the needs of the other person, even though they're mistreating them, because they're kind of used to that, putting the other person first. And so in general, there's a lot of anxiety and fear, a need for control, maybe a little bit of neediness, maybe a little bit of clinginess. And if it gets really intense, it could look like there are clients who do that. It could look like someone, when their partner leaves, they turn on the GPS in their phone in secret, and then they know where the partner is, and then they circle the place where the partner is to look at them through through the window. It can be unlocking their phone and going through all of their conversations. There's like this controlling, because what they fear most is that if the partner leaves, they will never come back. And for them, that's really hurtful and terrifying. And so if you have that attachment style, it would be to go to therapy, and through therapy, learn to soothe your own emotions. Understand that it is your attachment style and has to do with your parents, but not everyone is your parents, right? Understand that you have a rational brain now, not just an emotional brain, that the only type of brain you had when you were a child. Right now you're rationalized, you have a fully formed brain, so you could look at it in different manners. You could use your rationality and your objectivity to help you deal through that, and it's just to give you a lot of acceptance within that healing phase, and maybe even say it to your partners that you're dealing with an anxious attachment style and working on it. But I would really suggest going to therapy, because it's just wonderful. Therapy is wonderful. Everyone should go to therapy. Just putting that out there. So anyway, that's it. I just wanted to give a brief kind of overview of the anxious attachment style. If you have that, and you have that now, that's already like a huge step in like getting better, you could say. I mean, you can research it if you want, but just knowing it, it's awareness, and that's great. Okay, now let's go to avoidant attachment style, which is an interesting attachment style, and I believe I have that attachment style. I know I have an insecure attachment style. I'm not 100% sure which one, but I identify strongly with avoidance. So let's explore avoidant attachment style. Avoidant, if you remember, is being high in avoidance and low in anxiety. And so avoidant people, when they experience distress, which is the moment where it activates your need for attachment, they deactivate their attachment system and they do not seek other people. So in general, when you are avoidant, you use deactivating strategies to bring about more distance and separation between you and your loved ones. The type of parenting that leads to this attachment style, it can be controlling or intrusive parenting. And so your parents are very involved within your decisions. They make decisions for you. They want to know everything about you. And in general, there's no real boundary between you and them. And so in a way that makes you feel a little overwhelmed, a little overstimulated, and you kind of learn to put distance between you and the parents so as to lower your stimulation level, because it's a bit like, wow, when someone's like this in your face, you don't seek closeness, that's kind of impossible. You kind of, okay, back off a bit, it's that type of energy. The other type of parenting that it can be just completely emotionally detached parents. And so it can be one of two things. Your parents were present, they were involved, they were there, you had the perfect house, they looked like great parents or something, but they were never empathetic towards you. They never really listened to you, or never really cared if you were in pain, or they never said I love you to you, or they were not proud. They weren't interested in your interests, in your day at school, in what you wanted. They didn't really listen when you were angry, when you were sad, so there was kind of like this ignorance, this, you do not have emotional needs, be happy or nothing kind of feel. And so what the child learns there is, I'm not done. The other type of parenting can be kind of the opposite. So someone says they love you and they're proud of you and everything, but they disappear. Like they're just not physically present. And so when you're angry, when you're sad, they're just not there to support you and give you the nurture and the care that you need. And so no matter what, the child learns to rely on themselves, because engaging in the attachment, seeking support and wanting it and hoping for it is too painful. And so they kind of detach from that and they say, I'm going to rely on myself. I don't need anybody else. And yeah, that's it. And so it can go in levels of intensity. It's a quadrant. You could be near the cross, right? So not that high in avoidance, not that low in anxiety, just kind of here. Or it can be very intense, like super high in avoidance and super low in anxiety. You know, it depends from person to person. And so it might change how you engage a little bit. It felt as if I wanted to say something that I now forgot, but that's life. It slipped away. I have to let it go. No, I don't have to let it go. What is it? No idea. Yeah, anyway, they learn to rely on themselves. That's just what I'm going to say. So in adulthood, what that can look like in relationships. Okay, that can look like a fear of love and a fear of the possibility of intimacy and, opening yourself up and emotionally. Anxiety is triggered when you're getting close to someone. And so that might be not engaging with other people. That might be when you see someone, then you kind of disappear for days, weeks, months on end because, that was a lot. It might be that you really long for this perfect relationship, but you kind of feel as if you enter a relationship, your emotional needs will not be met. So they will either be ignored. Well, they will be ignored in one way or another. And so that it's like the opposite of anxious with the boundaries here is that you kind of build boundaries that are way too huge and exaggerated and rigid, and so that's not healthy boundaries. It's like it's way too much. You might suffer a little bit from loneliness, and when you feel like when you're in pain, instead of seeking help, you are alone. And that might go, if you're really intense, that might go with like, I never want to be in a relationship. I wouldn't be able to deal with a relationship. I will always be alone. I'm thinking of George Clooney for whatever reason. Now he's with a woman, but for the eternal bachelor, whatever. So it depends on the level of intensity. If it's not that intense, let's say like me, you're still going to seek relationships, but it's going to be kind of terrifying. And so yeah, signs of adulthood, it might be someone texts you, you take a long time to answer. It might be you wait for the other, you're kind of sizing up the other person, you don't trust them, so you're like, you are going to break my heart. And there's this feeling that, if you open yourself up to the belief that love can actually be great and that you actually deserve it, then if you're disappointed, it's going to hurt so much that you don't want to risk it a little bit. Oh, and again, one thing, if it's really intense, you might be just completely emotionally shut off and not have access to your emotions because no one ever taught you how to express and regulate your emotions. So real quick, like that's avoidant. Real quick, if you want to fix it, well, the main thing is knowing about it. I see it in myself now. My leg cracked and that really hurt. Now I see it in myself. I even do it, with family members, in any intimate relationship. That can be friendships or family members or romantic relationships. I have a hard time initiating, and I kind of disappear for a long while. And I'm just really nervous about the idea of getting close to someone and someone getting close to me and then hurting me. Like it really, it terrifies me. And so, well, terrifies me, not really. Well, kind of. I'm not that good at it. But I'm learning, right? Just knowing that you have that, then it's like, stupid you're so irrational. Like, go and see the person. You are not gonna die, So with knowing, you can kind of talk to yourself with your rational brain that you have now developed. Because when you're a child, you don't have that rational brain to understand clearly situations and to know that, for you, your parents are your world. And so it's during that time that you build your worldview about the world, right? But also about your worth and yourself through your parents. So it's kind of huge. But anyway, that's it. In therapy, you just go to therapy, because I think that you should go to therapy, even though you think you are going well. Therapy is wonderful. And with a therapist, you learn to open yourself up a bit and trust people more. And then that's great for you, Slowly you can heal that fear. But I really think that just being aware of it, it's like 50% of the work done. Because it's like, then like when your fear is triggered, it's like, oh, that's not about that person. It's about, my father that left, or my fear of, being told that I'm not good enough, or, then you kind of see it happen when it happens and when you're triggered. That's That's it. And now for fearful avoidant. This is a mix of both. It's like having a mix of the anxious attachment style and the avoidant attachment style. So you should watch both of them. But in general, you will use both activating strategies and deactivating strategies, because at one point you're afraid of closeness and intimacy with other people, and so you deactivate and you put distance. But then you're also afraid of distance and separation, and so you activate and you try and bring about more closeness. And so that can make you very confusing to other people, and also confusing to you, because you don't know anymore how to regulate yourself and your needs and how to relate to other people. You just have no idea exactly what you want, and so it might be very confusing. Like, for example, there was a teacher of mine. She was with a client, and the client had a child, and the child was most probably living with a disorganized attachment style. There was thunder. The child got afraid. What he did is he went towards his mother, then before touching her stopped, and then turned back, and then went to the door and took the handle and was about to leave, but then stopped, and then looked around and found like a table and just went underneath the table, like this, to kind of protect himself. You can see the conflicting behavior. So it's like distress, attachment. Okay, so let's go towards the mother. But wait, no, I don't trust the mother. I kind of fear her. Okay, no, then let's trust myself. Let's leave. Oh, wait, no, I don't trust myself either. I cannot deactivate. I can't leave. So what do I do? Okay, so I'll stay in the room, but I'm kind of afraid of my mother too. So I'm just gonna hide underneath the table. It's very sad, but fearful avoidant. It's also called that, the disorganized attachment style. If you have that, it's a little harder to change, but it's still possible with therapy. So yeah, maybe just like watching anxious and avoidant to have a bit of a view of the both sides of the you. And so that's it. That was a very long video. Maybe I'm gonna refilm it or something and not post this one. It's very possible. Very possible. But it's a very interesting subject, and I wanted to talk about it all in one video, and so I filmed for 33 minutes now. But anyway, yeah, so if you have now figured out your attachment style, I think that's wonderful for you. But it's a really, really interesting subject, and if you're aware of it, then it's just going to help you in your relationships a little bit. I think it's a really great weapon in your arsenal. And so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. Nobody's watching this probably, because why would you? You watched your part and then you just clicked off. But if you're here for whatever reason, thank you. And well, see you soon. Probably gonna post again in 2 weeks, kind of. So, bye.